Hi guys, I'm Felissa Rose, Angela from Sleepaway Camp, and you're listening to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Review podcast. I hope you enjoy it. And meet me at the waterfront after the social. Mwah.
Why are you doing this to us?
Because you were home.
In a world where zombies, ghosts, serial killers, and vampires all exist, welcome to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Review Podcast. First off, before we even get started, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been listening. We really appreciate it. I don't really know if everyone who listens truly understands how much all of the hosts are truly grateful that you take the time to listen to us. You know, this is just us speaking on our passion. And it's really just awesome that you guys are loving it and giving us so much good feedback. Tonight is my night to pick a movie, and I chose a very, very nostalgic movie for myself. It's not like Drew growing up with his grandmother at a really young age, but I was in high school when this movie came out. Tonight we're reviewing 2008's The Strangers. And I'm not going to get super, super deep into like my story of watching this because I want to save that for my rating. But I remember being, I think, in 11th grade, me and some friends going to see this movie. And this is a rated R movie. And you have to be 17 to get into a rated R movie. And the only person who was 17 in that group was me. And everybody else was 16. So they could not get in. So I went and watched this movie by my lonesome. And this movie don't get me wrong, it hits really good at home, honestly, if you're by yourself and watch it. But when you're in the theaters by yourself and you're surrounded by the noise and you see these visuals, it really, really hits at home. I truly, really like this movie, and that's just my that's just my general thoughts on this movie. Brian, what's your general thoughts on this movie?
Actually, this is the first time I'd ever seen this movie.
Oh, nice.
And hey, look, I'll tell you right now, I really enjoyed it. I mean, there's some nitpicks here and there, and I have a little bit of an issue, not an issue. I'll explain it at the end, about the end. But I really loved this movie. I mean, honestly, a lot of the tension building scenes in this movie felt a lot like 78 Halloween. So, you know, and I love that there's not a whole lot of backstory there. You know, you're kind of on a journey with the characters. I really like how they played this out. You know, actually, tell you a story, when I was watching it, you know, my mom came in to come over and see the baby and walked in and said something about, oh, hey, what are you watching? Oh, that looks good. And I said, look, you know, this is, you know, can I borrow it? And I was like, hey, this isn't like a horror movie. I mean, like, I won't say it's not a horror movie. It's not a slasher type movie. You know, this is like home invasion type movie. And she said, oh, okay, well, never mind. Because like it's a little bit more disturbing when it's really realistic. And this is pretty realistic.
Go ahead, Mike.
I agree with you, man. Overall, I enjoyed this movie. This is probably my third time seeing this movie. I saw it pretty soon after it came out. Again, I was back into horror and thrillers and all those kinds of things. So I remember seeing it, not in the theater, but shortly after it came out on DVD. I went and got the DVD and watched it with some friends and thought it was really well done. Again, you made a really good comparison, Brian, which, spoiler alert for later, Halloween 78 is my favorite horror movie of all time. This movie, while not as good, the cinematography is not as good, stuff like that, but it does remind me a lot of 1978 Halloween. The way they used the suspense, the way they used the mood, the atmosphere, the lighting, the music, all kind of plays into what is actually scary about this movie. And I will say there are moments where this movie is genuinely scary. I have some nitpicks like the rest of you. Don't get me wrong, but overall, I really, really enjoyed the movie, and also, sure we'll get into it, but A+ for Liv Tyler casting. Thank you. Sorry, I have to be on brand, you know.
Oh yeah. And unlike 30 Days of Night, this movie's going to be real easy to remember all the characters,
right?
Because there's only just a few of them, which kind of adds to this movie in my opinion.
I kind of like that. I like that there's a limited cast.
Y'all boys ready to jump into the review?
Let's do it.
All right, this movie starts off with some captions on the screen. It just says, inspired, I wrote it down, inspired by true events. According to the FBI, there are an estimated 1.4 million violent crimes in America each year. On the night of February 11, 2005, Kristen McKay and James Hoyt left a friend's wedding reception and returned to the Hoyt family summer home. The brutal events that took place there are not entirely known. The film starts with you hear a 911 call, and it's this little kid calling 911, and the kid's he's freaking out. He's real terrified of the scene he rolled up on. It shows his house, and it shows blood on the wall, a gun on the counter, a bloody knife on the ground, and then it cuts to a quiet car ride with our two stars of the movie, James and Kristen. It's kind of, you can feel something there. You can feel the tension between them because they're not saying nothing. Kristen's got tears kind of in her eyes. She's got kind of that sad blank face. James has that disappointed man look, which all three of us know, I'm sure. And they get to the house, the summer home. James just gets out of the car by himself, doesn't say nothing. He goes and checks the mail for some reason because it's just a summer home. I thought that was a little bit weird, personally.
A little bit.
He checks the mail. She just sits in the car by herself. They walk in, and Kristen notices there's like rose petals all over the ground. There's candles everywhere. It's a really, really romantic setup for the two of them. She goes to go take a bath. He helps her take her, draw her dress off, her necklace off. And James calls his friend and leaves his friend Mike a voicemail saying how what's happened and didn't go the way he planned. And James is sitting at a table eating some sponsor plug, Bluebell ice cream.
Yeah, I was going to say, somebody paid for that.
Y'all boys, Mike, you got any thoughts on just this little opening part?
I think it does a really good job setting up the characters that it's not too look. So a lot of people kind of think it's a negative when we don't get a lot of backstory. I think in this movie it helps. You get just enough. There's just enough character development to let us in to the characters' lives without taking forever to do it. So we have two likable characters on screen. One wanted to marry this woman he was truly in love with, and you kind of can see it from her perspective. Maybe she's not quite ready, doesn't think it's working. There's clearly something missing. And so I think everybody's been in a situation where they can relate. So not only are we like in their lives, but we can kind of relate to these people. We see ourselves in these people sometimes, and it makes the movie a little bit scarier as it goes along. So I really like these scenes. I think the acting, I think the acting by Liv Tyler is great, especially in a couple of the little scenes we get to. Anyway, great job. And by the way, the character of Mike, well, I'll wait. How about that? I'll wait.
All right, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I was gonna say the acting in this movie right off the bat, it's grade A, it's top notch.
Yes,
it's a step above almost a lot of the horror movies that we've reviewed. Also, in direct contrast, I think, to the last one, Silent Night, Deadly Night, that we just did. Like you said, there's not a whole lot of backstory in this, and unlike that movie, you really don't need it here.
Right.
And I really like how it unfolds a little bit at a time throughout the movie, just through some flashbacks. But they're not long, lengthy flashbacks. They could have shown you all this, they wanted to, but you still get the same character relationship that you get with that long drawn out, but it's, a little bit at a time. And I really liked that. I'm a sucker for these quote unquote true events, movies. And I really enjoyed this one for sure. Also, one last thing, in the opening scene, the houses that they show are supposed to resemble a specific house from various horror movies, such as like Amityville Horror House and Halloween, etc., like that. So that's a little fun factor plugged in there. Go ahead, Mike.
And Nico, one more thing. So, inspired by true events is a very nice cop-out for a lot of films, which I'm not saying that it's not true. I think the director even mentioned that it was loosely inspired by a series of home invasions and robberies happened in his neighborhood when he was a kid. A lot of people thought it was inspired by the Manson murders, maybe certain aspects, but he kind of shot that down. So inspired by true events, which we kind of talked about in Detective Chainsaw Massacre. Man, you can get away with a lot of shit. You can get,
Yeah, and
right,
and even
just to
though
put
it's, I
butts
mean,
in seats.
it doesn't even have to be true, like
Oh,
for
no,
real
no,
true
no,
to me,
no,
but
right.
like, just having that, well, this may be
I
true.
think it
Just
helps.
having
Yep,
that, it helps. It
yep,
helps a lot, at least in my book. Like,
yep.
I'm a
I
sucker
agree.
for those kind of movies.
I agree 100%.
Oh yeah, that definitely added that to the atmosphere. Like when
Yep.
I went and saw the movie in theaters, like it's like, oh shit, this kind of some of this might have happened, you know. All right, let's jump into the next scene. As Kristen's in the bathtub, you know, she's sitting in there. It's a beautiful bathtub. I feel so bad for my guy James. She's in this rose petal bathtub, and she you know, she puts her head against her knees, and she starts recapping the night. They're at this wedding reception. You know, she's sitting at the table with her friends, laughing, having a good time. James pulls her outside, and she says how cold she is. But then James pulls his ring out and says, "I want to." You know, he proposes to her, and she starts to, you know, gets that blank face and tears up a little bit. She just says, "I'm not ready," and that's why the car scene was so it was so dry, so
Right.
tense between the two. So she gets out of the bathtub. She joins him. She tells James how nice everything looks. And then James, you know, my man is kind of broken right now. He says he can't keep the ring. It's too embarrassing. He doesn't have, you know, he's hit too much pride as a man to take this ring back because he knows how bad it hurts to get rejected. She apologized, and you know it's understandable what Kristen says because he asks like, "Where are we going from here?" But she apologizes and just says she's not ready. So I kind of just took that as myself that they're going to stay together, but she's just not ready to marry him yet. That's just my interpretation of that
That's
scene.
how I viewed it too. Yeah.
He gets up, he puts a record on the record player, old school. She gets up, she starts to hug him from, you know, from the back. And then they turn around, they start kissing. He puts her on the table. He's getting ready to take her to Pound Town. Then all of a sudden, and you know, it's 4 o'clock in the morning too, and they hear a knock at the door, which is, you know, catches them really off guard. They open the door, and a part of this scene that I really like is before this girl knocks on the door, she untwisted the night or the outside light so they couldn't see her face. And as soon as they open the door, she says, "Is Tamara home?" And James is like, "Wrong house. There ain't no Tamara here." And as she walks away, I really, really like this part. She says, "See you later."
Oh, great.
Uh,
Great line. Awesome.
Brian, you got a thought on that scene real quick?
Yeah, I mean, the guys, you already feel super bad for this guy because of there's been hardly 30 minutes of this movie, not even that, maybe 15 minutes of this movie, and in that little short time, you have such amazing character development that you already feel super bad for this guy, feel bad for this, you know, the situation that they're in, and love both of these characters just like that. So to me, that's like amazing writing. But and at the same time, you instantly hate whoever's at the door. Anybody
Right.
that's at the door, that's cock blocking my guy right now.
It's perfect. It's perfectly done. The
Yeah.
line, "see you later," is so well placed. And I mean, yeah, it's a dead giveaway, but it's just really well done. And also, I'll admit, I feel bad for my guy James here. However, I feel bad for Kristen as well because it is very, very clear she didn't want to hurt him. Like
Right.
she's not purposely doing this. It's not vindictive or anything like that. She's clearly, I think, in love with him. Just maybe isn't quite ready to take that leap, and I think that's relatable for a lot of people. And so again, like you said, Brian, anybody that knocked on that door because they're really about to have a really nice scene where, okay, I still love you, you still love me, you know, let's get a little freaky, and then knock on the door. Man, screw that person at the door, whoever that is. It could have been Jesus. But I thought it was really well. Man, so far so good. I have nitpicks later, but man, the first 30 to 40 minutes of this movie, it really sucks me in to the rest of it.
Well, and at the same time, they're doing all that, and at the same time, because you know you're at a horror movie, you know you're watching a scary movie, it's building tension
Right.
just incredibly. Like, they're just in normal situations, and it's like tense as hell watching this
Yes.
movie.
And one more thing, Nico, I'm gonna switch it back to you. You said the way they lit her face where you couldn't see it, that's great. That is classic 1978 Halloween. Perfect. Really well
Oh
done.
yeah. So the couple go, they shut the door, the vibe's been killed now. They're both I think one of them sitting by the fireplace, one sitting on the couch. Kristen just says, "I'm out of cigarettes." And James like, "Well, I'll go get you some." He's ready to get the hell out of there. I can relate to that. When you're a dude, you get let down by a girl, you just want to be by yourself for a minute, clear your head. So he leaves to go get her some cigarettes. But before he does that, he starts her up a fire. And Kristen's home alone. She puts another record on, and she starts looking at this ring James got her, and she's looking around the house. And as she's walking around this house, you hear another knock at the door, and you're like, "Oh shoot!" She doesn't open the door, but she goes up to it, and she just hears, "Is Tamara here?" And Kristen goes, "You've already came by this house." And the lady at the door says, "Are you sure?" And then it shows Kristen locking the door. And right now, this is where you start getting to an oh shit scene that has stuck with me since 2008. And I was in the theaters and saw this. As she walks away from the door, she notices this fire is going crazy all of a sudden. And the smoke detector goes off. She gets on this chair to like get it down. And if the smoke detector falls off the ceiling, and she hears another super, super loud knock at the door. And the smoke detector, and I'm stressing the smoke detector because it's right now it's on the ground, but it's about to be somewhere different. She grabs her phone out of her bag, and of course it's not charged because back in 2008 when you had flip phones, you wasn't glued to this thing all day like we are now.
No.
She puts it on the charge, and the knocking at the door is still going on, and it's going crazy. She calls James to tell him that her phone's cut up and all that. And she smokes a cigarette. And this is, I wrote, with like stars all around it. Upcoming is an iconic visual. Like this scene has stuck with me forever. She's smoking in this house. She walks into the kitchen area, and all of a sudden, the shot like pans out to where you can see her smoking, and you can see like the hallway back there. Then all of a sudden, you just see this guy. I call him Sackhead. Sackhead is in the background in the hallway, and you just see this guy standing in the house and watching her smoke the cigarette. She walks over to the faucet. She pours herself a glass of water. And the part I love about this is it just shows him standing there this whole time while she's doing all this stuff. And then, there's another knock at the door, and you don't see Sackhead no more. So she grabs a knife, and she notices that the smoke detector that was on the floor has now been moved and is sitting on the chair. And and she notices the charger to her cell phone has been cut. And she hears, a wind chime at this door or at the window. And she goes to look at it, and she's real hesitant to open this curtain up. So she sticks the knife through it, kind of opens it a little bit. Then all of a sudden she rips the curtains open, and Sackhead is outside of it. And, as soon as she sees Sackhead's mask, and she starts freaking out crazy like anybody would. The record player starts going nuts. And then she goes to open the door, and she sees Dollface on the outside. She slams the door shut and locks it. She goes to the room and hides. She hears the door open, and the record player stops, and it's James. It was a really, really. It wasn't a. The tension was really, really tense right there. I really like this scene.
Right.
And and then Kristen tells James about everything that's going on. Mike, do you want to give your quick thoughts on those scenes?
So real quick, the tension they use, and something as simple as the smoke alarm being moved from where she had it. Something so simple, yet, oh, fuck, someone's in this house. And I know they show you someone's in there. And by the way, a sackhead can be scary. Just throwing that out there. Hashtag Team Sack. But but no, I love the build up in this scene, man. And I think Liv Tyler as Kristen is great. And again, the knocks on the door aren't kind of what scares me the most. Like I said, what really got me was smoke detector's been moved. She's realized it's not when we realize that someone's there, because like you said, that iconic shot is awesome. I'm not denying that. But what's freaked me out was when she realizes someone is in this house now. Her charger is cut. The smoke detector's been moved from where she had it. And by the way, you get a nice changing clothes scene. I know I'm staying on brand, okay? But But nah, man, I love that. I love again the first 45 minutes of this movie, the tension, the mood, atmosphere, lighting. I know I'm repeating myself, but all these things are important. And by the way, really old timey music is scary as shit. No matter what it was meant to sound like, I'm sure it was meant to be like the party music of the era, but it is scary as shit when used properly. So really well done. Music, everything, lighting, perfect.
Yeah, I
Go
think
ahead,
it's the
Brian.
I think it's a record player part that makes it just so just
Agreed.
creepy. But it's the man that iconic shot you're talking about. Man, you can take that dude out and put Michael Myers there, and it's I mean that is as 78 Halloween as this movie gets. And I thought that's the first thing I thought about when I saw that scene. But I have a question. Maybe you guys will have an answer to because it was kind of a nitpick at first, but I was like, I don't know. I don't really know maybe I missed something. But okay, so when smoke was coming back into the house, that caused the smoke detector to go off. I assumed, okay, they just clogged the chimney up and they're about to
Right.
try to smoke her out. But it's only for like a second. It comes back in, and I thought, okay, we're about to have a big problem. But the smoke detector goes off, and then she's just in another room, comes back, everything's fine and dandy. So did he just like mess with the fire and cause that? You think? I mean, like, what's the cause of that?
That's actually a really good question. I it is something that crossed my mind. Concrete. I even
Yeah,
looked into it. I couldn't find
that's
anything
a
concrete.
And the doors. The only other thing, I mean, obviously it adds to the tension, but the whole time I was like, God damn, these doors don't have any peepholes in them. And I guess because in my mind, when I picture that, I pictured the purge and how it keeps
Right.
showing like shows out the doorbell, out the eye hole. That's the kind of shot I kept expecting to see, but never got because there's no eye holes on these doors.
Right.
Brian.
Uh,
You actually brought up a good point about the fire because I've really never, paid super close attention to that actual one little spot. But I actually saw on IMDb this movie, as good as it is, it does have quite a bit of goose in it that I
Right.
looked up. There's quite a bit of goose, and I'll get into those at the end of the
The
review.
cigarette, for one thing.
Yeah,
The
and
cigarette.
the bandage she puts on her hand
Right.
later on.
Right.
But
Right.
oh, okay.
so after James gets home, she's freaking out. She's freaking out, telling him about the man in the mask and the lady with the doll face on. They both walk out of the room, and James is just looking through the house, and he discovers the cell phone has been put in the fire. They look out the window and they see Dollface staring into the house. Then she just disappears out of nowhere. James goes outside to see his car windows have been smashed and shattered. He's reaching, he's sitting in his driver's seat. He's reaching into like the passenger floor and all that. Then all of a sudden, you see this hand just touch his neck, and then as soon as he turns around, you hear somebody running away. And he looks and sees Dollface just staring right at him. And Kristen walks outside. She's like, "What's happening, James? What's happening? Come back inside." But James like, "Shut up, go back inside." He didn't say shut up. He was like, "Go inside, Kristen, go inside." He walks around the yard and then he just goes back inside. And then I just wrote down, I can't remember what exactly it was, but there was an unnecessary jump scare after that.
Oh yeah, there
Oh,
was.
yeah, it was when he walks in, you think it's somebody attacking Kristen, I think. He finally takes his tie off and he uses it to cover Kristen's wound on her hand, I guess from the knife whenever she was running through the house. He says he hasn't seen a car pass or a dog bark. So it's pretty much them two versus these strangers. He finds his phone and it doesn't have a battery. So he's like, "Oh, great." So they run out the house and they run straight for the car to try and make a getaway. As they go to crank the car up, this truck comes out of nowhere and pulls into the driveway and turns their bright lights on so they can't see. It's the character they call Pinup Girl. They see Dollface and the Sackhead standing in front, and she drives this truck straight into the back of their car. So they obviously they can't drive away now, so they jump out and they run back inside. And he says, "We got to find a gun. We got to find a gun." He finds his I think it's his grandpa's shotgun or his dad. I can't remember what he was. He finds a shotgun, and Kristen's like, "Didn't y'all used to hunt?" He's like, "I don't even know how to use this thing. I was just lying about going hunting." She's like, "Oh, great." Then, I thought this was really cool. They open up the window and they see the words "hello" written on it. I guess it's in paint or lipstick or something like that. And you just hear them like throwing the stuff at the wall. And it's really loud. They finally find some shells for the shotgun. And I read he doesn't know how to use the gun. They go to run out the door, but Sackhead is axing the door open. So they grab this. I think is it the piano? I think it's the piano, and they use
I
it to block
love
off
that
the
axe in
door.
the door.
And then James takes the gun and he shoots the gun at the door, and it just cuts away from it. Brian, you got any quick thoughts on those scenes?
Well, I mean, this is one of those things that I have to suspend belief about a little
Yeah.
bit because he would have hit that dude with that shotgun, like blasted the door. He would have taken him out, or at least hit him, like because there was no missing. He was no getting away from that shot through the door. So that was one where I had to a little suspend disbelief a little bit. I was super frustrated in the closet whenever he was like, "Oh, I don't know how to use this gun." I was thinking, "Oh, Jesus Christ! Like it's going to be a total waste to have this gun." But
Right.
my man stepped up and figured it out. So that's good. I've said this before with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you can say it's a problem, but it's just something that I do. I put myself in the positions of the people that are like the guys that are in the movie, and most of the time if the movie follows what I would do in that situation, like Chainsaw Massacre did, the remake, then like it makes it a little bit more scary to me. And I mean, I got to say there were some decisions that my man made here that I would not have made. So I guess I mean, and that's just me on a personal level. So but as as far as the tension, man, it's a level 10 right now.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say there's a lot of those scenes you talked about where you're kind of a lump in your throat because, again, you have to suspend your disbelief, but I kind of feel like that's most movies. I mean, for the most part. So I'm willing to suspend my disbelief. This is a really. I watched this twice. I watched the theatrical cut. I watched an unrated cut, and it was kind of interesting to see old horror versus new horror. So a lot of the horror movies we've covered here have been kind of old, 70s, 80s. We're covering a or late 2000s movie. Everything's been done. So you kind of have to find a way to do something different. Even my favorite movie of all time, which is 78 Halloween, shows the Myers mask too much in the daylight. Or honestly, it just shows it too damn much. In this movie, they show the masks, whatever you want to say, early a lot, but they're lit really well, and it's done perfect. And so the suspense is still there with the mask. Like you haven't got a really good look at what these masks look like until he's hacking at the door with the axe, which is a scene that I love because the inside the house when he's hacking at the door, it's like boom, boom, boom. Like I put myself in that scene. I know my heart would be racing at that point. And so, again, like you said, some of the decisions James decides to make kind of, but at least he figured out the gun. The gun, like once, and you're right, he would have hit him, but he didn't. I'm willing to suspend that disbelief for the sake of the tension and the suspense. So again, so far, not a scene I have a gripe with. It's coming though.
Well, let me just clarify that if I am to the point where I am sticking myself in the movie, then it's already above 95% of the horror movies that we watch. So that means, hey, I'm really involved in this movie, and it's starting to bother me a little bit. I wouldn't say scare me, but it's starting to really bother me, and so that's why. And if I get to that point where I am inserting myself into that situation, then the movie's got me, and had me for a while.
All right, real quick, Nico. We're this far into the film and we don't have a kill yet, and I think that's kind of cool. It makes it clearly not a slasher because if there were a slasher by now, we'd at least have 2 to 3 people dead. So, like you said, it's kind of interesting to note how many different sects of horror there really are. Like this is a home invasion film, which can be done really well and really scary, and so far so good. Not a slasher in a traditional sense, but masks are kind of synonymous with being a slasher movie, and so it kind of plays on that trope. But I think it's a home invasion movie that's done really well so far.
And what's so unique about this movie and Scream is it feels real.
Yeah,
like
it does,
like Michael Myers, Freddy, Jason. I mean, those are entertaining films, but I mean, I mean, obviously, if you shoot one of them, they're gonna. If you shoot a regular
Right.
person, they're gonna die. I mean, they're not super. There's no superhuman people. That's what makes this movie and Scream so unique to people and so captivating, in my opinion, just because
Right.
it feels so damn real. After James shoots at the door at Sackhead, axing the door, they both go into this room and they camp out Call of Duty style with a shotgun. And as they're sitting in there, they hear somebody walk in and they put another record on. And shout out to my man Merle Haggard, Mama
My
Tried.
man.
I love that song.
Great
And
song.
I'm glad. And like both of the two other guys have said, just the music on these records just adds to the tension of this movie.
Uh-huh.
It just adds so much to the atmosphere. And my man James, his friend Mike pulls up to the yard. You know, he's trying to call James. Then all of a sudden, as he's sitting in his Jeep, he just has something thrown right through his windshield. And he's like, what the fuck? You know? And so he gets out and he sees their battered car. Like all the windows have shattered. It's been rammed by another vehicle. So he walks into the house real kind of slow. And as he's walking, this is another one of those, you know, pictures, visuals that just sticks with you. Because like if you Googled, you know, The Strangers on Google and you search images, it shows this picture. As he's slowly walking down the hallway, it shows Sackhead appear from behind him with an axe in his hand, and he's just getting ready to chop him at any moment. But Sackhead knows that James and Kristen are camping out in this room and they have a gun. So he's kind of like a lion just stalking, a real slow. And Mike is walking down the hallway, and as he's walking down real slow, he walks by the room where James and Kristen are camping, and James has the shotgun pointed right at the entrance of the door. And as soon as he sees Mike's appearance, he just shoots him, and you just see the body drop. And then Mike is freaking out, and Kristen, you know, she's just seeing somebody get killed. And Mike's like, he didn't have a mask on. He didn't have a mask on. Why didn't he have a mask on? So Mike eventually gets up, or not Mike, excuse me. James gets up and he walks over and he sees that it's Mike, and he starts, you know, he just killed his best friend. So, you know, he's really, you know, devastated. He's traumatized. Kristen realizes what it was, and they both start crying. And it's, man, I just couldn't imagine like the tension that they're going through. He gets up and he sees the killers wrote on this window. He wrote the word killer on it. So I really love the fact that they play not only, you know, terror of being stalked, but they play like this psychological terror on the two with all the things they've done. And after this, James, you know, he's just kind of pissed off at the world now. He's ready to go. He's ready like a gladiator to me. Like he's just ready to go out there and just fight now. He tells Kristen he's going out there to fight. He walks out with the gun and he sees a pinup girl at, I think it's like the shed or this barn, whatever you want to call it. And then as he's like crawling on the ground like war style, and as he goes to turn around, Sackhead comes out of nowhere and just knocks him out. Brian, do you want to give your thoughts on that scene?
Okay, yeah. Let me just I'll say this and then I will shift gears. The dude, any person in their right mind would have walked in that house yelling to let them know they were there. Like in a situation like that, you're gonna walk in that house and be like, yell for, or is it James? Yell for James, yell for, you know, you would have yelled it. Like that would have happened. But let's just suspend belief. Let's get rid of that. And holy crap. Like, okay, they acted this scene just exactly like probably it would really play out in real life if you had just shot your best friend. You know, I was ready for him to walk out there and start hosing people with that gun, and knowing that they don't have a gun, I don't really know why he didn't do that. But, you know, for the sake of the movie, I get that. So the scene's great. Don't let me take away from that scene. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to, I don't want to play, I'm not saying I'm playing devil's advocate, but I'm just trying to maybe insert a little bit of realism and say, hey, you've got to suspend disbelief a little bit to me in this scene.
Hey, Mike, hold on one second before you go. I agree with you, Brian. It's like you just saw somebody throw something, or you just had somebody throw something through your windshield. You saw
Right.
their car had the glass shattered and rammed. Why would you walk in and not say, hey, James, is anyone home? Is everything okay? It's like, why would you walk in dead quiet? I mean, yeah. I mean, because, everything that just happened to you, you should automatically think that something might have happened inside, too. But go ahead, Mike. What are your thoughts on this scene?
Hey, man. Shout out to your boy, did meet James, he actually made a really funny joke with talking about Mike in this scene. He said he must have been a real big Merle Haggard fan. He couldn't help himself walking inside to enjoy the free concert. I thought that was good. But no, man, okay. So a lot of people use this as a negative, but I think this, not the suspension of disbelief. We all kind of agree on that. I hate to just keep hammering it home. So I think it's really well done how these killers take their time. So again, not a slasher. They are fucking with these people, and I think that is even scarier. They look. 9 times, these people know these people are not leaving. They're not getting out of this house. Like, we're going to kill these people. But it's almost more of a mind fuck to let them think they have hope. Like, I think that's really twisted and makes these 3 people even scarier. Like, I think that, I know a lot of people thought, man, you're taking forever. Get to the kills. Well, this movie's not a slasher. It's supposed to build up tension, build suspense to a big, conclusion. Whether you like that conclusion or not is one thing, but I think it's really well done as we're on our journey. Like I can't say it. Like, I think that's my favorite part of the middle. I guess the quote unquote second act of this film is the way the killers kind of take their time, fuck with these people. So I enjoyed it.
Kristen goes outside, and I wrote down this in big bold letters. She goes outside of this house and she sits down. I wrote WTF, like, what are you doing? And it shows Sackhead. It shows Sackhead's in the house again, and like he's walking he's getting ready to walk out of like these curtains wherever she's sitting. But then all of a sudden she just gets up and starts Usain Bolton like towards that barn or shed or whatever I was talking about earlier. She takes off running as fast as she can. And of course, in like every other horror movie, as she takes off running, she falls and hurts herself. Go figure. And she,
Scream was right. Sam.
Yeah. She hears some like breaking noises and she starts crawling. And it shows, man, it's such a like obviously there's a lot of stuff you can like just nitpick in this movie, but it shows like Pinup Girl walking right behind her, and like these shots are so good to me. And Pinup Girl's right behind her, and then she just disappears. And Kristen, she crawls into that barn. She grabs a flashlight. She's hobbling around. She notices where the axe should be. She sees where they took the axe. And she starts walking around this barn. And she finds this radio. And she starts trying to call out for help. And, on her second and third attempt, she finally gets through to somebody. But as soon as she does, Pinup Girl takes that axe and she hits it and breaks it. And like Mike just said, these 3 are just fucking with him so much, and it's so great because Pinup Girl could have easily, or Pinup Girl could have easily just killed Kristen then.
Yes.
But Kristen, she gets back outside. She starts crawling on her hands and knees again back to the house, and she kind of hides behind this bush. She sees Sackhead just walking through the yard, and she sees Pinup Girl walking out of that shed, and she sees Dollface on the swing, and she notices that their car just got lit on fire. And I just wrote the word after about the card. I just wrote the word hopeless. That's just how I would have kind of felt. Just hopeless at that point.
Yeah.
Brian,
hey, Nico. Where exactly you are right now. I don't know if you were going to go any further, but where you are right now is she just, the way I interpreted the shot is that she's just sitting right in the middle of the yard, completely visible to anybody. So I was just, because I saw that shot and I was like, what the hell is she doing? And then her decision is to go back into the house, which to me is like, I think at this point I would be running away from the house, but I don't know. But I didn't understand why she was sitting in dead middle of the yard, like with no cover, no anything.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'll provide a small counterpoint just to play devil's advocate for fun. Maybe in the mindset, she's thinking, if I can get and look, I'm not saying this is the right thing, but maybe she's thinking the best way to survive this is to take these people out. And I can't do that by running away because we talked about she's not getting out of that house. There's no way. They've cornered it. She can run as far as she wants. They're killing her, or going to attempt to anyways. And so maybe she's thinking, I have a knife. I have a chance. Kind of the only thing I can think to maybe defend her actions. But I mean, you're
But I
right.
don't think she has the knife at this point. I think that
Well,
knife's
I mean,
gone
in
right now. So I
general,
mean, she's
well, if you go back in the house, there's something, gun,
yeah.
knife, something, the poker stick at the fireplace, something I can maybe help myself with because she doesn't see herself getting out of this mess without taking the three of them out. And while that's probably not great logic, but in that moment, again, I try to place myself in her shoes. I probably would have a fuzzy brain as well. So I try
Oh
not to
yeah.
be. I try not to be too hard on it, but you're right. When you're watching at home, it's like, look at this dumbass. Look at
Well,
this
yeah. I'm sure her mindset was completely crazy. But I was just thinking, because in my head, I kept thinking, not to be
Right.
comparison because it's not a comparison at all, really. But you watch like Heather Langenkamp or you watch,
Hi, Heather.
Lloyd, yeah, and you watch them and you, they get into those modes like we've talked about before, where it's like, all right, I'm done, I'm ready to fight, like I'm done being victim and I'm
I
ready to
think
fight.
she gets there.
And,
Yeah,
and
I
see,
think. Yeah.
I didn't really see that with her. I thought like
Right.
maybe she did, but she's so beat up. She can't even walk. I don't, hardly. And so, I mean, I don't know.
You touched on something I really wanted to touch on. This movie is almost even more disturbing and more heartbreaking because we know what transpired earlier in the night. So not only do we have these two people that are kind of heartbroken from what took place, now they have to go through this shit too. Like, man, it continued to pull me in. Like, I'll give big credit to them laying that groundwork because without it, I don't think I care about these people. But
Hey, remember what you just said because I'm gonna replay that at the end of this movie.
okay, I'm fine with that because I think I know what you're gonna say, but that's okay. Not sorry, they're coming up on Mike's death as I watch the film right here. But real quick, I I think it helps so much with my emotional investment, man. Just seeing those two characters go through all of this shit
Right.
is really makes or really helps the movie out. I haven't been as negative as I want to be. I'm waiting.
Mike, I'm actually at the scene where Mike just got shot too.
Same.
The movie playing in the background.
He just got shot.
And like what both of you were just talking about, it kind of reminds me of 30 Days of Night too, because at the beginning of that movie, it kind of paints the portrait of Eben and Stella
Right.
are having some problems too. So, but I don't think that movie that movie didn't really set up the relationship as good as this one.
I was gonna say
But-
this one set it up way better.
Yeah,
this did a much better job.
This movie definitely, because Mike, you're right. As they're fighting, or they're fighting these strangers. You still remember, like, just 30, 40 minutes earlier. He was heartbroken.
Right.
And she was
They're both
devastated.
heartbroken. She's devastated.
And I want to touch on a point Brian brought up too. She's gotten to that, or getting to the point of just ready to just go fight him. I think James did get to that point. He's like, screw this.
Oh, he definitely
I'm not
did.
sitting in here. I'm just going to go fight him. And I think if he would have just kept a level head, even though he did just kill one of his best friends, him and Kristen should have just stayed in that room with the gun. In my opinion, because there's no other way they could have got snuck up on.
Right.
Just keep that gun pointed right. The only thing they could have done is light the house on fire. That's the only thing
This
that they
isn't
could
a
have really
Halloween-
done.
And Nico, this isn't a Halloween movie, so no one's setting the house on fire.
Yeah, I think there was a mistake. Besides him killing his friend, I think it was a mistake for the writers to give them a gun because to me, like,
Yeah, that's true.
He could have. The movie would have easily, I think, been over. With maybe 75% of the guys in that situation, they would have easily walked out there and hosed them all. None of them's got guns. None of them have any, reason to be able, or even a method to be able to fight back for that. So, I think maybe the writers made a little bit of mistake in my eyes with that, but it adds a lot of emotional instability when they did have him killing his best friend. So I
think that's why it's there. I honestly think that's why the gun is there. To make that literally Mike's death is why the gun is there, in my opinion. And I think that because he killed them, not the strangers, it's even more emotional now. Like, shit, I really effed up, man.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. And you see, after he realizes I've killed my friend, he goes to a different place. Like I talked about. He's like, F it. I want these people dead. Forget it. And so it's very emotional, man. He didn't mean to kill him. And And I honestly think that's the only reason the gun is there. Maybe it's a mistake, but I mean, in the long run, I think it kind of pays off with the emotion that he shows after he realizes he killed Mike.
Oh yeah, because absolutely, your life is over after that happens. Even if you survive this
Right.
night, you just killed your best friend.
Right.
You know, that's accidental manslaughter charges right there anyway.
Right.
So
Right.
I mean, you not to mention you just killed your best friend and shot him in the head. So I mean, it's your life's over at that point. I
Right.
mean, you don't have anything. Yeah, I get it for sure.
I think before we jump on, I think it adds to the part where he said that he didn't go hunting either. I think that kind of it helps paint the picture that he doesn't have the natural
Right.
instinct to, because when you hunt you just sit there and wait for your prey to show up. You don't
Oh, yeah,
like
good
when you're
point.
deer hunting, you don't
Really
go
great
chasing
point.
in the woods through it or whatever. That's
Great
just
point.
that's
Yeah,
just something
really
that came
good
to my
point.
mind.
I didn't
Hey,
think about
Nico,
that.
small nitpick.
Go ahead.
The way that the words are written on the glass in this movie is less like blood and more like lipstick.
I think it is
Mhm.
lipstick. That's what I thought it was.
I'm like, that's really nice handwriting. Whoever's doing this, really, really good penmanship.
I really
like.
I thought it was
It
lipstick. I
stuck out.
never thought it was blood.
Oh, see, this whole time I'm thinking, is that if that's supposed to be blood, then you're doing a bad job.
So after Kristen, she's laying in this yard, looking around the house, and like Brian said, it looks like she's right in the middle of the yard. She eventually, gets back on her feet. She kind of hobbles into the house, and she's walking around. She walks into this room, and all the lights go out, and she's just wandering the house. And she's all of a sudden she starts hearing the piano playing, and she turns around and she sees Sackhead walking down the hall. And she goes and she hides in his closet. And I wrote, of course she hides in the closet. And she's, Sackhead, all of a sudden he reappears again. She looks out the closet. They kind of have that thing where, the victim and the slasher or whatever, they kind of make eye contact, but they don't make eye contact. She looks out of the closet and all of a sudden, Dollface appears right in on the other side of the door with a jump scare. And Kristen, she, for some reason, she walks out. And she sees Dollface at the table where the ice cream and all that was, and she sees Dollface, with a knife, and she's just rubbing the knife on the table, playing with it, and just, they're just teasing these two victims so much. And then, Kristen eventually she just says, "Why are you doing this to us?" And then all of a sudden you just hear this body thrown into the room. It shows Sackhead throwing James inside. Dollface tells her Dollface tells her that you're going to die. Kristen, she runs and hides in the bedroom, and she can't get out of the window. So all of a sudden, she tries to walk out of the room again, but as soon as she takes a step out, Sackhead grabs her and throws her right into the wall and then knocks her out, and he starts dragging her through the house. And we're almost to the ending of the movie. Brian, you got any thoughts on that scene?
No, anyway, I was thinking, man, where is James this whole time? Because Sackhead to me is the only one that's got the strength to be able to hold him down or, restrain James, and he's inside hunting her. And so I was like, do the two girls have him? Like, is he, where's he at? That was until he was thrown through the window, which, I was like, oh, okay, well, there he is. But still, I guess I don't know if I would have liked to have known where he was a little bit. It would have helped me, I guess, been like, oh, okay, well, that's where James is at. Like if it would have been a short scene or something, after he gets caught in the woods, just kind of showing him either being tied up or just, something, I guess, to help me out with that a little bit. But, as far as the tension, again, I can't say enough about Liv Tyler's acting in this movie because it's
great.
almost like, it's almost like, all those movies where it's just like basically one person with, what was that zombie movie with Will Smith in it? Where he's basically,
I Am Legend.
yeah,
I Am
where
Legend.
it's just him acting basically the whole time. I know
Tom
that
Hanks in Castaway.
right.
Will Smith and I Am Legend.
It's
right.
basically just Liv Tyler
Yes,
giving
it is.
giving you this emotion because you have emotionless characters that are in the scene with her. It's just her giving
Right.
you what you're supposed to feel, and it's amazing.
And Brian, I'm watching a scene right now where she's she's basically doing this. Oh, sorry about the mic knock. She's doing this on her own at this point, and she's crawling, and just in the background, ever so slightly, you see Dollface, or it might be Pinup Girl, because they kind of blur it out a little bit so you can't tell which one it is. And this, like, Liv is killing it. Like,
Yeah.
she is terrified for her life, but also has no idea someone's following her. And that is even more. We know, she doesn't know. And when that happens in a good movie, man, it is awesome. And they do a really good job of kind of using the back. Like, that's one thing I'll give a big thumbs up to this movie. They do a really good job of using the background as a character. Like, a lot of the early scenes, you get like a static silence, and here comes one of the strangers onto the, like, into the background ever so slightly. They do a really good job shooting that. Cinematography is good there. Like, really well shot, really well done. So I agree with you, man.
All right, so
Liv
this
is
is
great.
the finale right here, guys. The scene cuts and it's the morning time. It shows James and Kristen. They're tied to these chairs. You know, they're like roped and tied up, and they're face to face with the strangers, and they're just looking at, you know, the strangers just in the living room looking right at them tied up to these chairs. And she says, "Why are you doing this to us?" And you know, this is just that terrifying line to me because it feels so damn real. Because I mean, in 2008 was, you know, a rough time, but man, now in 2019, man, people are nuts now. You know, they Kristen says, "Why are you doing this to us?" And she just replies, "Because you were home." Like that's all they tell
I
her.
love that line.
Yeah, for
Classic.
You know, Kristen's crying. You know, James he's freaking out. You know, he's panicking. And then all three of the strangers, they all start to take their mask off. And Sackhead is the first one to grab the knife, and he stabs James first. Then Pinup Girl stabs him. Then Dollface stabs Kristen. And you know, they both, they're kind of embracing each other. You know, they're kissing like face to face. And after Dollface stabs Kristen, we see the two Mormon boys on their bikes, and the strangers are in their truck driving down the road, and they stop. And she sees the Mormon boys. They have these little pamphlets, and she asks if she can have one. And the Mormon boy says, "Well, are you a sinner?" And she says, "Well, sometimes I am." Well, Pinup Girl tells Dollface, "Next time this will be easier." And the Mormon boys, they start riding their bike down the road, and they eventually walk into this house, and they see the carnage. You know, they see the bodies, they see the blood, they see the gun, and they walk up to Kristen, and you get that loud, blood-curdling scream that she does as soon as the boy goes to reach for her.
Right.
And I believe if y'all watch the unrated version, it shows Mike's phone ringing.
Yeah.
And, you know, Kristen's crawling to try and answer it, but I believe it's Sackhead who takes the phone with him. I think, I don't know if y'all wrote down the difference between the unrated and the theatrical version, but I think that's the only difference. But
As far as that scene, yes.
At the very end of the movie, the Mormon boy, you know, he goes to reach for Kristen, and Kristen like sticks her hand out at him, and she starts screaming. You know, blood curdling screams. All I wrote. Mike, do you want to give your thoughts on the ending?
Okay, so I think me and Brian might finally have a disagreement, but that's okay. The podcast will survive, everyone. I actually love this ending. I think, okay, so one thing I mentioned earlier is the way they shoot the mask and how I think Halloween maybe kind of overexposes the Michael Myers mask in the first movie. The way they shoot the mask in this movie is really well done. It's there's a lot of the mask, but they're shot really well with the lighting. But you do see a lot of it. I think had they maybe lowered the mask count, like as far as how much you saw them, maybe made it a little bit darker so you couldn't see them quite as well. That daylight reveal where it's morning time. By the way, when it's morning time, that's kind of even scarier to me because we see a lot of horror movies, all of them take place at night. Outside of like Halloween 78, a couple other movies, like most of them take place at night. They do a really good job in this final act of the daylight's kind of its own deal. Like, I think it's really well done. And so, again, I think had they kind of maybe waited on that mask reveal, you could have maybe gotten more out of the daylight. Wow, look at these are creepy ass masks. But we've already seen them a bunch, so that kind of kills the mood. But outside of that, I love it. I think when I put myself in the two characters' shoes, you're in a hopeless situation. You can't win. You are going down with the ship, kind of like the captain of the Titanic. Like, you have no choice. You're tied to these chairs. You want to know why in the fuck are you messing with us? If we're going to die, I at least want to know why we're dying. And like a really good horror movie that I love no motive. I think that's much scarier than like some long, drawn out, backward ass motive that a lot of horror movies try to give. There is no motive. It's great because you were home. Holy shit. That's awesome. Like, I think that's great. Really well done. Delivered perfectly. It's really the only time you get to hear them speak, unlike Praise at Night, which anyway. I thought really well done, really well shot. I think the kill of James is fine. A lot of people had a complaint with that, but that's a really realistic kill. Like, what a terrorizing way to go. Just and listen, I know I've been a big negative on stabs to the gut, stabs to the face, stabs to the neck. But in this movie, it works. It's very, very real. Like, like you feel the pain with James. You've gone on this journey with him, and you feel it. Like, damn it, I don't want James to die. James is good. I want him to live, and he dies anyways. And so, and even the non-kill of Kristen, which, that's another story for another day. I guess we can get into it after we're done with this scene. But I think strangers, I love that they take their mask off, but we don't see it. I love that. I think that's great. I don't want to know. I think if they showed us that, I'd be pissed. So that's kind of why I am with the scene. I thought the final act is really well done.
Go ahead, Brian.
So, yeah, I'm actually kind of the opposite of Mike with the daytime thing. Like, as soon as it turns daytime outside, to me, I almost breathe a sense of relief, almost just like, oh, okay, for some reason, daylight to me brings, hope. So it's a little bit different. But look, how do I say this without, so I love, I'm the same with Mike on that too. I love the characters having no motive. It would have taken away from this movie had they given them a motive, had they given us a backstory or anything. I think it would have given, taken away from it. And, honestly, congrats. And, I will clap to this movie for having the balls to, end the way that it did. I just don't particularly, after you spend this entire, personally, spend the entire movie with these people, watching them just suffer and suffer and suffer. I needed to see them survive this. I don't know why, but I needed to, even if they were just stabbed and found by those two Mormon boys, and the fact that they were still alive, you still know that they have this psychological torture that they just went through. They'll never be the same. Their lives are never going to be the same. To me, it doesn't take away anything to leave them alive. And, like I said, I applaud the movie for doing that. I just personally would have liked to have seen them survive and have something come out of this night, because it was nothing but just beat down the entire movie, and nothing ever happens that's not a beat down. And to me, I needed that at the end.
And by the way, I don't necessarily disagree with you, Brian. I think that, man, sometimes, and we've talked about it in other movie series, where at some point you got to make a decision. Do I want to kill a main character? Like I've preached about with the Halloween series for years. Can we kill Laurie Strode? Like, can we just do that? In this movie, I'm sorry. I mean, really, really well done, not resurrection style, which sucks ass. So, real quick, no, but in this movie, somebody had to die, and it can't be our heroine. It just can't. It can't be Liv Tyler, although that would have been some emotion. I would have been more let down by that. I feel James dying is kind of like, okay, this sucks. I want to see them survive and live happily ever after. But that's not the story being told. The story being told is they have a very complicated relationship now.
There's no way they're living happily ever after that, even if they were alive.
So at the end of the day, it almost warrants James's death, in my opinion. Like, he kind of not took one for the team, because it's not like I jumped in front of a knife for you, but he almost kind of had to die so Liv could live.
Well, and see, I don't even take that as being, I don't know why, because she didn't die in the movie. But to me, like, it's almost like I'm almost like, there's no way she survives this. She's dead. Like, it's just, to me, I don't know. Just chalk that up as she died. That's in my head, even though you don't see whether she does or doesn't survive, survive any further. I'm just like, I chalk them up as being dead. And I guess I needed to see a little bit more than that. That's all.
That's understandable.
I want to counterpoint Brian on the morning part, and I'm not doing it just to debate him or nothing, but to me, it kind of gives you like it gives you like the false hope, like real quick. Like it shows the morning, so you're thinking, oh man, they might have survived. Oh, they're tied up to a chair.
No, yeah, you're right, 100%. That's no, I
Uh,
just Mike said it's almost a little scarier to him, but to me, it gives me that hope. I guess that you're talking
Right,
about. I get
right.
that. I get that false sense of hope
And that's
because it's
understandable.
daytime.
Right.
And one more thing I wanted to ask you guys about, because this movie was in '08 and the Halloween remake was in '07. It kind of reminded me of when young Michael killed his stepdad. Whenever, he's tied, he's duct taping him to the chair and, he's got his clown mask on and he cuts his throat and he's looking right into his eyes. For some reason, I kind of got, the same vibe, I got that same eerie feeling watching, the strangers killed them the same way. I mean, not with his throat slit, but, just the way it happened. What do you think about that, Mike?
So I think a lot of movies around that time kind of not took from each other in a bad way, but they all movies from like '03 to '09 have a very similar, like anything in the slasher slash, anything off of that has a very similar vibe. So I could very like I see what you're saying. It kind of crossed my mind when I watched it again, the unrated cut of it. I'm like, that kind of reminds me of Little Michael, and you kind of want. The only difference is you wanted to see John Forsythe die. In this movie, you didn't want to see James die. I guess that's the only difference. But again, like you said, a lot of the movies around that time were kind of playing off of each other, and I think that shows in this movie.
Y'all boys want to jump into fun facts?
Let's do it. I have 8.
Oh wow. How many do you got, Brian? I only have 3.
I only have 2 or 3. Nothing really. Actually, just 2 that I'm just gonna say. So I'll just do 2.
You go first. I'll go. Then Mike can do 8.
Okay. One of them is
I
that
might take a couple.
this entire movie chronological order.
That's
from
one of
the
mine.
beginning
So.
to the end, which is
That's awesome.
definitely and it's definitely different. That would probably, if I was an actress or an actor, would add to okay, like you're going in chronological order, so how you're supposed to be acting because you just went through all of this, scene after scene after scene after scene, and to to mimic Liv's character's panic attack. Liv had to exert some physical exercises to get her out of breath. I mean, they took to make her reactions so much more realistic. And director Brian Bertino would tell Liv where the loud bangs are coming from, only for the bang to come from another direction to get a more realistic shot out of her. So that's the only 2 that I've got. There's a couple more on here, but I don't want to take everybody's.
Well, you took some time, which is good. That's good.
I only have 3 wrote down, and one Mike actually brought up earlier. According to director Brian Bertino, the film is partially based on an incident he experienced as a child. One evening, a stranger came to his door, asked for someone who was not there, and they left. And later Bertino found out that other homes in his neighborhood had been broken into that night. The second fun fact I have is the film was shot entirely with handheld cameras or Steadicams. Every shot has some camera movement. And the third fun fact that I have is Kurt Russell mentioned on James Corden's show that this movie always scares him. So that's all I wrote down.
And I got mine from thestrangers.net.
Yeah, I got mine off IMDb. Go ahead, Mike, with your fun facts.
All right, so real quick, you mentioned a couple of mine, but that's good. I'm glad because I don't have to read off all of mine. But it's kind of fun. Okay, so
Hey, Mike. Hey, hold up real quick. Before you go, I'm just going to say, like I said earlier, this movie has a lot of goofs in it that I thought were kind of funny. There's some like inconsistencies in the scenes. Like when Kristen, when she's sitting outside and she goes to take off running, in the scene before she takes off running, she still has the tied around her hand to cover her wound. But after she falls, it shows her hand, and she doesn't have the tie on her hand no more.
I know.
And I read
goof.
also that they changed the number of candles. At first, there's like 1, or there's 2 of them, but then the next scene they're closer together. Then the next scene there's 4 of them. And I read also that like at the beginning of the movie it was vanilla ice cream, and then later it's strawberry or something like that.
Yeah.
So there were some goofs that they had that I just thought were kind of interesting. Go ahead with your fun facts, Mike.
So a couple things. You mentioned the camera work. I thought most of it was really good, but there's a scene at the dinner table where they're talking and kind of like really having a real moment with each other, like still love you, still love me, but the camera is moving like the Blair Witch. And I'm like, fuck this shit. Like it really kind of like it was very annoying, but that's fine. Um okay, so you guys mentioned the chronological order, I mentioned the robberies, all that stuff. Liv Tyler, you mentioned the exercise, specifically jumping jacks, and she ran around in circles like a dog to like really like get her worn out. So that's kind of cool. Originally, this movie was called The Faces, which I think is worse. So I'm glad they didn't call it that.
Right.
The entire house is a soundstage, not a real house. The entire set, it's a shot from outside the house that you see in the morning. It's just a picture of or a shot of a house that they found. Inside the house is just all set. Liv Tyler had tonsillitis the entire making of this movie.
Oh, wow.
So all the screams and all the real emotions she showed was fought through tonsillitis. In the third act that we talk about, that's on my movie that I'm watching right now, there's a scene that they didn't put in either cut where there's extended dialogue from our strangers that we don't hear. It was director's choice to kind of cut that. He thought it made the strangers more scary, and I agree. I feel like the less emotive, the better. While you're doing this, you're home, and I think that makes it a lot better. So, you guys mentioned, and real quick, just because I like to do this in every movie, I don't know why. I'm kind of a guy. It's just kind of my thing. This movie grossed $82 million on a $9 million budget. That's really good.
Wow. Yes, it is.
Mixed reviews, obviously, like any horror movie. If you go see it and you're a horror fan, you probably like this movie. It depends on what you like. There's a bunch of people, a lot of reviews say this is a boring movie where nothing happened. And I think that's bullshit. I think if you like suspense and tension and build up, I think this is the movie for you. If you like constant kills and torture porn, then Saw is kind of more up your bag. Or you can be a balanced horror fan like Nico and enjoy both for what they are. So it took a decade to get the sequel done. It literally pitched, wrote, and processed almost immediately after. But it took a decade to get cast, director, location, someone to sign off on it. It took about a decade to get all of that done. And the sequel, which I don't think is as good of a movie, we'll talk about it at some other time though. But it took a decade to get the sequel. So I thought that was really interesting as well.
Well, unless it's some big cult classic, right. 10 years is too long. It's too long to capitalize on.
Right. I was going to say,
like this, I think
they kind of messed up by having it take so long. I feel like had you put it out 3 years later, you could have really capitalized on. A lot of people like this movie because people can relate to someone coming into their house and invading their damn privacy. I feel like that's a really big scary thing that people fear. And so I think you could have capitalized off that. Real quick, I talked about it with Halloween. So a lot of people that love Halloween, there's clearly there's a big Halloween cult following. A lot of them love this movie because it does get back to the bare bones basic of what that movie used. It's not a copycat. There's a bunch of differences. I'm not saying that. But I do feel like there's some realistic kills in this movie. Look, there's only 2 kills in this whole damn movie, which is kind of unusual for what we cover. But the 2 kills outside of Mike, so the 1 kill, I guess. James's kill, super realistic. The attempt to kill Kristen is really realistic, and I feel like that really helps. So, again, very, very, very Halloween vibes. Halloween 78, not Halloween Resurrection or 5. Oh, sorry. I love you, brother Nico.
I want to agree with you real quick, Mike. Pray at Night. I don't hate that movie, but it's
not terrible.
Opposite of this movie. That it's really fast paced. I mean, it's got some good scenes in it, but it definitely doesn't have the same vibe as this movie. I'm gonna ask y'all to go first and let me go last tonight since I picked it, and I want to kind of just rant for a little bit. Mike, Brian, whoever wants to go first, y'all just go ahead and have at it.
Go ahead, Brian.
I'll go. Look, like I said to begin with, I hadn't seen this movie before this, and I know I nitpicked a lot of it, but I really, really enjoyed this movie a lot more than I thought I was going to. I mean, for a movie's got to pique my interest a lot for me to just go, I want to go watch it, go rent it, especially with kids. It's hard to just find the time to even do that to begin with. But in a lot of slasher movies and things like that, you root for I almost root for the bad guy. I almost root for who the slasher, like Silent Night, Deadly Night, Jason,
Every Halloween
all
movie
those.
I've ever seen.
I'm going for the killer, and
Right.
I hated the fucking killers in this movie, or in this movie, and that's a testament to the writing. 100%, it's great. I felt exactly probably what the writers expected me to feel, and I will rate this movie an 8 out of 10. And honestly, if I would have gotten what I wanted to get at the end of it, I probably even would have gone a little bit higher with it. But I really did enjoy this movie.
Hey, did you pick a least favorite and favorite kill? I mean, it's only 2 of them. It doesn't
Only
really
2,
matter.
so
Okay, yeah. So my favorite one is dude's head getting blown off just
Right.
because of the realism looking of it, and my least favorite would be the other one. Just but they're both very realistic, like we've talked about, and that adds a lot to the creepiness of this movie.
Go ahead, Mike.
So just to get it out of the way, least favorite kill and favorite kill, we're kind of a wash. Like I'm just gonna go tie. There's only 2 kills, and I think they're both kind of realistic, and I kind of like them both equally the same. So I didn't really have a pick there. Like I just kind of think they're kind of a wash. They tie on both categories. I've left something out of fun facts. So they spent a lot of money to get the Merle Haggard Mama Tried song. They spent almost as much money getting the rights to use that song as they did to get one of the cameras for this movie. So they put a lot to get that song in that scene. They had to fight legal and all this other stuff, but it did eventually work out, and I think it makes that scene. I think it's really well done. I thought that was really cool. I've left that out. I think this movie's really good. I love this movie, and again, there's some nitpicks. You have to suspend your disbelief.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's most horror, so I'm not going to hammer that. I'm going to give this movie just a flat 7. I think it's really, really good. It takes a lot to go past 7 for me. And I listened back to one of our other shows the other day where I gave a movie above this movie. I like this movie more than I do Friday Part 4. So I should probably re-rate that movie. And I like Friday Part 4. It's not that. If I'm weighing which one I enjoy more, I'm going to pop this in before I do that movie. So I think it's a flat 7. And I love the characters of the strangers. Praise at Night does not capitalize on the really good suspense that this movie lays out. So if you get a chance to see the sequel, I say see it, but don't be expecting the same kind of movie that you see here. And
I'll watch it whenever Nico watches 2016 Blair Witch. I'll watch it.
Yeah, y'all have to. Honestly, y'all should watch it at the same time. Let's do movie versus movie. Hey, let's do movie versus movie. We'll do the Blair Witch actually, it's just simply titled Blair Witch from 2016, and we'll do Stranger Prays at Night, and we'll combat the two. We'll talk about them off of each other. That'd be kind of fun. And by the way, Nico, since you're here, we're live on our podcast. Well, eventually, we're gonna have to do movie versus movie. Like, I'm down to do Freddy's Dead versus Jason Takes Manhattan.
I'm just gonna stay off that subject right now because I'm in a good mood right now.
I love you, buddy. I love you, man.
I'm pretty much agreeing with what Mike said. Both the kills are good to me. I don't really have necessarily a favorite because I wrote the favorite is James, my least favorite was Mike, but to me, both of them, are the tension is real, the terror is real. So I don't have a least, or they're tied. I'll just rate them. I'll tie them. All right. Before I say my actual number rate, I'm just going to read off the things I wrote. This movie has some nitpicks. It has a false jump scare or two in it. However, this movie has it all to me. It has the real life terror. This is something I know it's probably going to catch y'all's attention, but to me, this movie felt like an hour and 16-minute version of the opening scene of Scream.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I wrote down, I can feel the terror and the fear between the two main characters the whole movie. I feel their hopelessness. It has some of the most iconic visuals to me. The scene, with Kristen smoking and you see Sackhead in the hallway. I remember, all right, back in 2008 when me and my friends went and saw this movie, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, I was the only one who was 17. The rest of them weren't old enough to get in. So I don't know if y'all remember this movie or not, but they went and saw that movie, The Love Guru, with Mike Myers.
Boo! One of the worst damn films ever made. Fuck you, Mike Myers.
So while they went and watched
shitty Mike Myers,
while they went and watched the comedy, I went by myself to watch this movie, to watch The Strangers. I remember, when that scene happened where she's smoking and you see Sackhead. I still remember, this lady saying, "Oh hell no," and and everybody was so scared at that moment. It wasn't even nobody even laughed. Nobody made a noise. Nothing. They were just all panicking. And I still remember sitting in that seat and hearing that. And that moment, I wrote down, that moment just stuck with me forever. I remember how I felt walking out of that movie theater. And to me, this movie, it still holds up in 2008 if you watch just this movie without the second one. Because the second one kind of makes Sackhead a freaking Jason or Michael Myers type. He's super strong, hard to kill. But this movie just felt, like I said, it just feels real. It feels you can watch this movie at home by yourself or with your significant other in a dark room and still feel the tension and all the terror to me. And I'm going to be the first one to do it because I still have the nostalgia. I'm giving this movie a 10 out of 10.
Holy shit. Hey, and by the way, that's okay. And I gave Halloween 78 and 9.5, and only because there's some stuff that doesn't age well. So I think if you love this movie and it has a nostalgic pull for you, I think 10 out of 10 is fine, brother. Like, I got no issue with that.
That's what I'm saying. It has everything. It has the fear. It has the realism.
Right.
It has the nostalgia for me. It has all of it to me. And I know Brian was close to giving Scream a 10. He was at 9.5. He'd probably go back and give it a 10 if he could.
I'm not gonna lie, I love Scream too. Like I think I gave it a flat 9 only because I have not found a 10 movie as far as horror goes, but Halloween 78 is pretty close.
Well, I'll say you said that this was like the opening to Scream, and you saw how much I love Scream. Like it's top 3 favorite horror movies for me ever. I love Scream. But this movie did that tension way better than Scream did.
Absolutely.
Way better. Yep. And I honestly can't say enough about this movie. And you talk about your theater experience. That's kind of the same way or the same kind of experience I had with Paranormal Activity and with Blair Witch Project in the theater that added so much to it. Honestly, now, and I don't know if it's because I'm older or what, I hate going to the theater to watch a horror movie because I hate the reactions from the rest of the people. When I went to see 2018 Halloween in the theater,
I'm the same way.
Kill everybody around me, just screaming and laughing and blah, it's so loud and everything. It's like it gives people more of, I don't know why people go crazy in horror movies, but they do. But you can't take away the experiences that you have with some of them, especially like this one, like you said.
Brian, I actually made a YouTube video back in 2016. I went and saw that movie Lights Out, and literally the whole movie theater would not shut the hell up the whole time. I made a YouTube video that said I will never go see another horror movie that's within the first 3 weeks of it being out. I'm gonna wait until like it's about to get pulled almost.
Yeah.
And it really sucks because you pay damn near $20 for a ticket. Mm-hmm. Drinks and snacks cost $20 almost. And then you got people talking or on their phone the whole damn time. They need to have. I'm just ranting about movies now. You need to have people in there telling people shut the hell up or you got to leave. But anyway, go ahead, Mike. I saw you put your hand up.
Well, no, you guys, all of you. Hey, you both make a good point, man. I went and saw Halloween 2018, and imagine me, lifelong, big time Michael Myers stan. Yeah. I'm in a theater, and every other thing is, oh shit, oh no, don't do that, And that sounded really bad, but no, dude, there was this really hillbilly motherfucker. Hold on, excuse my language. There's this real hillbilly motherfucker. Leave this in. Who's sitting next to me, who's literally almost commentating the whole movie like we would. I'm like, come on, man. Like, I like this dialogue, but let's wait till it's over. Like, come on, man. So I'm with you. I don't have the theater experience from this movie, and I do think it adds to the enjoyment. Like you mentioned, Brian, I got to see Paranormal Activity in the theater maybe 2 days after it came out, and that is why that movie sticks with me. Like, I'm not scared by those types of things, but I can appreciate the reaction of the people in the theater around me. They were freaking out. People were almost like standing on their chair and stuff like that. And I know, and you read online about this movie that that we covered today, Strangers, same thing. Because people can relate to people coming into their house and fucking with them. And people are like, oh shit. So I can only imagine what it would have been like to see the movie in the theater back then, man. I can totally understand that.
Friday at work, my wife is home with, my newborn baby and my son. And, I don't know how it is where you guys live, but there is a lot of sex trafficking that happens in our neck of the woods, in the panhandle up here, especially on our, towards the end here, towards Alabama. Well, while I was at work, I have cameras outside, and when they pick up motion, I get notifications on it. So my wife is, I get a notification and look on the camera, and there is a woman that's walking up to my house just with red hair. You can tell is messed up on drugs, like big time. You can tell, like she's itching. She's the typical, like you would assume, meth head walking up to my house. And I start like, oh shit, like what's going on? Then I get another notification, and I can hear my dog barking through the door and her leaving. So, my wife won't answer the phone. So I go home. She was in the shower, and thankfully my son, we have beat it into him enough to not answer the door when somebody knocks on the door. But it's so, watching this movie today, that's what I kept thinking of. And I promise you, watching this movie today, I checked to make sure my doors were locked 3 or 4 times today when I would leave, right, more than I normally would. So this movie really affected me a lot, like psychologically, like because of how realistic it is.
Right.
Yeah, this movie just, I'm trying not to just beat that one scene, but it's like whenever it just shows Sackhead just watching her in the hallway, it just makes you feel like, it just gives you that like scared to death, hopeless feeling. And after that scene, you see her phone charger's cut. The smoke detector got picked up. She knows somebody's in this house. Obviously, it's just I think this movie just really did a very, very good job of just creating just the internal terror. Mike, do you got any final thoughts, or you want to jump into this question we got from a fan?
Love this movie. Glad you made us watch it again. It had been a while. Brother Drew could not be with us tonight. I know he would provide some balance because we heaped a lot of love on this film. He probably would have, had the other side of the argument, but I think it's really good, and I think normally I don't do this with a movie because I think it kind of goes without saying, if you're listening to this review, you've either seen this film or you're going to see it. I think you should watch this movie. I think it's awesome. I think for its time, and this is my kind of movie. I love Halloween 78, so this kind of draws off of that. Like it's not a slasher, but it is a slash. Like it's really hard to explain. So big thumbs up. Glad you picked it, Nico.
For sure.
And one more thing about it is this movie's not long. It's only an hour and
I was
15 minutes.
It is a very short watch. That's why I watched it twice.
If you only have if you just need something to do to burn an hour and a half, just watch this movie real quick.
Absolutely.
But we got a question from a fan on Twitter. Benjamin, his @ is ping golf 24, and he has just a pretty generic but very broad question. He asked all of us on the pod, "What's our favorite horror flick?" And I already know Mike. He's already kind of said it throughout this pod. So go ahead, Mike. Tell us why Halloween 78 is your favorite.
Halloween 78 is my favorite because, one, I love the character of Michael Myers, and I'll defend it until the cows come home. This isn't the podcast to get into that, but what I'll say is I think it stands the test of time with the way it uses, I repeat these words all the time, mood, atmosphere, lighting. It does all of those 3 things so well. And we nitpicked it to death. Like, don't get me, it was really hard, even for me, it was really hard to find nitpicks in the movie. When we reviewed it, it's like, we have to find something negative to talk about because you can't just love a film. But I almost gave it a 9.5. I just love the character of Michael Myers. I really do. Always have, always will. And it's the grandfather. It's the grandfather of one of my favorite genres, which is slasher. It started it all. It started everything. It started Jason. It started Freddy. It started even Leatherface. To an extent anyway. And so it started a lot of what we really like to cover, which is making horror more mainstream, making horror more relevant, making horror. So I think the film stands up. And it's kind of weird because I'm young, I'm 27 years old, and Halloween 78 is still my favorite horror movie. Like I will watch it. I probably watch it 5 times a year. I really do. I probably watch Halloween 78 5 times a year at least. So just love the movie. Big fan of John Carpenter as well. He's got some other really good movies. So I think that also plays into it.
All right, Brian, I'll go next and I'll let you go last. This is a hard question to answer, honestly. It's super hard because, like we've said all night, there's different subgenres of this genre. Yeah. But after, some quick thought, I chose the original Saw movie. Honestly, to be honest, it's not my favorite. It's not the most rewatchable of the whole series to me. But I still remember I don't remember how old I was, but I remember my mom taking me and my brother to Movie Gallery in Live Oak. And we got this movie on, was it V8, DVD maybe? We got Saw on DVD. And I swear to God, whenever at the very end of this movie, after watching all these traps and all that, I swear, whenever that old dude in the middle of the floor stood up, I was, as the young kids say right now, I was shook. When John Kramer stood up and told Adam that the key was in the bathtub, and like we thought this guy was dead the whole movie, that twist blew my mind. Honestly, I did not expect that at all. That's another one of those movies and scenes that will stick with me forever. I'll never forget watching that movie. And whenever we review Saw, I'm probably going to gush and love all over it too. But
I will too. I love that.
Saw is my favorite horror franchise. Honestly, Friday the 13th is right behind it, like nipping at its heels.
That's shocking to me that you said that.
Nipping right at its heels. But to me, the difference we saw on Friday the 13th is Saw just makes you use your mind the whole movie, and I love that. So my personal favorite horror film is the original Saw. And like I told Benjamin on Twitter, once I got hooked to the Saw franchise, every single Halloween, whenever these movies came out, I went and saw it in theaters. This is before people were, annoying assholes at the theaters. People actually watched them and enjoyed them. Brian, what's your favorite horror flick?
So I think mine's probably, I think I'm going to go opposite of Mike, and it's interesting too because
yours
Mike
is controversial.
Mike's younger, and he has an older pick, whereas I'm older and I started on those old movies, the old movies like Halloween, like, the Friday the 13th, the Nightmares, stuff like that. And my favorite is not the top of my list for scariest. I have a different movie for that. I have a different movie for maybe best done, horror movie. I don't think it's a horror movie, but if you're asking me what my favorite is, I kind of judge that by a whole bunch of different criteria. One of them is definitely watchability factor for me. Like Mike said, and you said, Nico, you watch these movies like over and over and over again, and you don't get tired of them. I watch Halloween almost every Halloween, but I get tired of it. I didn't have to rewatch it at all to do our horror movie, our review podcast that we did, because I've watched it so many times, it's just ingrained in who I am. But the fact that I get tired of it is, it can't be my favorite. So like the 2009 remake of Friday the 13th is my favorite horror movie, if I had to say one. I can watch that over and over and over and over again and not get tired of it. Now, maybe that changes when I get older. I don't know. But I've seen it used to be, for instance, one of the Friday the 13th, and but as I've gotten older, I don't know if I've either seen it too many times and I'm tired of it, or I don't know. I just really think that, to me, the 2009 remake of Jason was everything I've ever wanted Jason to be, a Jason movie to be. It took all the aspects of all of the movies. I always say, whenever we post something on Twitter, and I'm always like, well, this outfit, this mask would go
Right.
better in this movie, and this actor would go better in this movie. And to me, this movie finally took all the aspects of Jason and all the aspects of the Friday the 13th movies that I liked and put them together into one film. That's why it's my favorite.
I have a lot of thoughts about '09 Jason, but I'm gonna save it for when we cover that movie. And I don't mean in a negative; I mean in a positive. Like I ranked it. I think I ranked it 2 or 3 when we ranked our Friday the 13th. And so, again, I'm with both of you. I love the first Saw. I love the Friday the 13th remake or reboot, if you will. Again, honestly, Halloween '78 is my favorite just because I enjoy that franchise so much, and I feel like to me, it's the best movie of the franchise, which is kind of maybe not saying a whole lot about that franchise, but whatever. Halloween 2018 was really good too, so that's okay.
Benjamin, appreciate the question.
Yeah,
man.
thank you, man.
We're going to close this out now. Guys, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We've got all of those. I actually today pinned a tweet that links you to all of those. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Give us a 5-star rating. We really appreciate it. We appreciate all of the love we've been getting. We're not entirely sure what we're doing next week yet. If what we've got cooked up for y'all goes through, we got a really, really something big coming for the first review of the new year.
Yes.
But we will let all the fans know what the move is for next week. We really appreciate the support. Mike, Brian, I appreciate you guys doing the show with me. We missed Drew tonight because I'm sure.
Appreciate you, man.
Knowing Drew, who the hell knows? Drew might have came on here and gave this movie a 9 or 10.
Man, I was just thinking that. What if it was all a swerve?
That's why I
Swerve.
called him out. I called him out on Twitter for that exact thing because he prides himself on not wanting you to know how he really feels about it. So I went the opposite way and said, okay,
Didn't
well, you're
deny it either. He didn't say shit. So it makes me think he was gonna get this movie a 9. Like I'm thinking this movie's gonna be a 9, 9.5.
I don't know. Well, maybe we'll find out next time we can ask him.
But we appreciate the support, guys, and we're going to be coming even stronger into the new year. Everyone have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year. Appreciate the support, everybody. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just want to remind everybody to don't go out there.